Hey bronies, today is Tuesday, September 6th, 2011, and this is The Girl, the Gator, and the Tanuki, Part 1 by Blame Your Fate. Gummy the alligator had to be the most boring pet ever. It was a beautiful day, sunny with not a cloud in sight, and what was he doing? Standing there, staring blankly at absolutely nothing. "And why exactly are we here again?" asked Scootaloo, who was leaning against her trademark scooter, looking quite bored. The Pegasus filly entertained herself by performing some cool tricks earlier. Now, she and her friends, the Cutie Mark Crusaders, had nothing to do but watch Gummy do nothing. "I thought if we took care of Gummy, we could get some kind of cutie mark," replied Applebloom. "Like an animal caretaker, or an alligator tamer, or a sitting in the park doing nothing cutie mark?" Scootaloo rolled her eyes. This would usually be the part where Applebloom said something back, and they would argue. It was kind of their thing. But Applebloom was too bored to care. Plus, Scootaloo was right. It had been a whole hour since they left Sugar Cube Corner, because they got bored of watching Gummy doing nothing there, and set out for the park. The hope was that the alligator would be stimulated by the weather and the playing ponies and do something. No such luck. "Can we do something else now?" groaned Sweetie Belle from her lying position on the bench next to Applebloom. "Yeah, let's dump this lame pet back at Pinkie Pie's and do that hang gliding thing I was talking about." Scootaloo grinned, probably picturing living out her flying fantasies. "Y'all know we can't do that. Pinkie Pie's out of town at the confesti cake thingy," Applebloom said strongly. "The confestival?" asked Sweetie Belle, perking up. "I've heard there are cakes from all over Equestria there." "Yeah, that. She's coming back tonight, so I promised to look after Gummy." Applebloom remembered how Applejack, her big sister, was asked first, but she was too busy with the harvest, so the filly volunteered. "And a Cutie Mark Crusader never breaks a promise." The others went silent. Applebloom knew if she brought up their honor as Crusaders, they'd stop complaining. Truth is, she wanted out of this job too, but after all the trouble she went through to convince her sister that she was responsible enough to handle it, she couldn't just quit. And if she had to suffer through it, she'd rather have her two best friends at her side. But Scootaloo's narrowed eyes and smirk were a sign that she was having other thoughts. "You're right. Crusader should never break a promise," she said. "But we didn't break the promise. You did." "Hey, yeah, you're right," said a wide-eyed Sweetie Belle. "Well, yeah, but y'all can't just leave me," was all Applebloom could manage to get out. "Like Heyhey can't. But if it really is my destiny to get a cutie mark for being bored out of my mind, then I'd rather have a blank flank for life." And with that, she put on her helmet and attached her scooter to the Crusader's makeshift passenger wagon. "You coming, Sweetie Belle?" Sweetie Belle got off the bench and into the wagon without a second of delay. As she strapped on her helmet, Applebloom caught her eye. "Sorry," said the unicorn with a guilty expression. "See you later?" "Yeah." "All right, let's do this. Later, Applebloom." Scootaloo called as she flapped her tiny wings. The force may not have been enough for the young Pegasus to fly, but it was more than adequate to propel the scooter. Applebloom watched as her friend sped off, Sweetie Belle waving in the back. She continued to watch until they rounded a corner, disappearing into town. With them gone, that left Applebloom alone with "Gummy?" The alligator was gone. Applebloom jumped to her feet, looking all around. That lame pet had been still the whole time, and the one moment she takes her eyes off him, he moves. "Gummy!" "Ah!" came a strange call from somewhere. It didn't matter. It wasn't Gummy. "Gummy!" Applebloom started galloping. To where, she didn't know, but she had to. "Caw!" There it was again. No time for that, Apple. "Caw! Shut up, you stupid bird!" Applebloom shouted at the sky. She saw the culprit, one of those big hunter birds that eat smaller animals. It was brown, with a white head and a yellow beak, and some weird green part on its tail. Even weirder, that green part had purple eyes. Applebloom stared at this oddity for a few seconds before realizing, "Gummy!" The alligator had been bitten by the bird and was hanging on. The bird didn't even seem to notice that it had a passenger. Applebloom followed as it flew along, straight towards the Everfree Forest. The filly's eyes widened as the bird descended towards the dreadful place. "Gummy, y'all better get down here right now." Gummy wasn't listening, or didn't care. He stayed lashed onto the bird as it disappeared into the trees. Applebloom came to a halt at the edge of the forest. She had gone in there before, and would have never come out if it wasn't for her babysitter Fluttershy. She turned around and started to walk away from the forest. As much as she hated to admit it, she needed a big pony for this. She needed to ask Applejack for help. This thought made her stop. The whole point of pet sitting was to prove that she was a big pony, a responsible grown-up. She'd never hear the end of it if she went crying to her big sister for help, not to mention she made a promise to take care of Gummy, and a cutie mark crusader never breaks a promise. The lone filly closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then, without giving herself enough time to reconsider, she dashed into the forest. Gummy found that the bird didn't taste very good. Lucky for the alligator, the bird was nice enough to land in her nest, which was full of tasty eggs. Of course, Gummy had never had eggs before, so his conclusion that they were tasty was completely based on the fact that they were within biting range. Gummy's ride stopped at her nest just long enough to drop off some twigs, and then flew off again, leaving Gummy all alone with the eggs. Even that loud yellow one who had never had any idea what Gummy was thinking would have been able to read his expression. It was lunchtime! Chomp! He bit the nearest egg, only to find out that it wasn't very good either. He held it in his mouth, sucking on the shell. Still nothing. After a few moments of trying to draw out some kind of flavor, something clicked in the little alligator's brain. Memories of eggs, and the pink one using them to try to make food. But she always did something first. What was it? She broke them! She broke the shell, and then the tasty stuff came out! With this knowledge at the forefront of his thoughts, the hungry gator chomped down with renewed vigor. Soon it would crack. Soon the yummy part would come out. Almost. Gah! He spit out the egg. It didn't have a single crack. Gummy's stomach started to make a growling noise. He stared longingly at the egg. No lunchtime. Having some trouble there, little one? Even though he was startled, Gummy didn't actually move. He only shifted his eyes up to look at the owner of the voice. Staring back at him were a pair of beady black eyes. Fortunately for Applebloom, the Everfree Forest wasn't so scary in the daytime. That's because the more dangerous creatures came out at night, which was still 2 hours away. The other fortunate thing was that it didn't take her too long to find the tree in which Gummy was trapped. The unfortunate thing was that she wasn't the only one who found him in the tree. "You know you have to break the eggs to eat them, right?" said the creature to Gummy. The creature was big, or at least bigger than Applebloom and Gummy. It had fairly thick brown fur, with patches of black on its forelegs and its face. The patch on its face was all around its eyes, so that it looked sort of like a little mask. "A raccoon?" Applebloom said, mostly to herself, but in the quiet of the forest it was loud enough to catch the creature's attention. It looked down from where it hung near the bird's nest. "Excuse me, did you just say raccoon?" The low, gruff voice made Applebloom guess it was male. His beady black eyes were fixed on the filly, and not in any way that could be considered friendly. Yes, sir. You are a raccoon, right?" she replied in her best attempt at a brave voice. "Raccoon? I am no simple raccoon." He bounded down the tree, and at about halfway he leapt off, did a flip, and landed in front of Applebloom. "I am the legendary Tanuki." He emphasized this announcement by standing on his hind legs and throwing his two front in the air. This made him about twice her height, but also ridiculous enough to erase her fear of him. "To whaty?" she asked. "Tanuki," he said again, with the pose. Upon seeing her confused look remained unchanged, he sighed and got back on all fours. "I'm a legendary creature from another land. Your people would think of me as something like a mix of your dog and raccoon." "So you are a raccoon!" exclaimed the filly. "No!" roared the Tanuki. "As you can see, I'm much bigger, much smarter, and much awesomer. I am the legendary Tanuki. Understand?" He sneered, which made him scary again. Applebloom thought it best to agree. "Yes, sir." "Good." He turned and hopped back up the tree into the nest. "Now, if you'll excuse me, it's lunchtime. It's hard to be legendary on an empty stomach." He grabbed an egg from the nest and looked over. Applebloom remembered her sister explaining how raccoons steal eggs from birds' nests to eat. She always felt bad for the birds, but she wasn't about to tell the Tanuki that. "This'll do." He was about to head back down when he noticed Gummy, who was trying again to break an egg by biting it with his toothless mouth. "Good luck, little one." This made Applebloom remember why she was there in the first place.
"Oh, hey, Mr. Tanuki,"
she called out.
"could you do me a favor? That Gator's with me. Could you bring him down here?"
"Of course. Come, little one."
He scooped up Gummy, who as usual didn't react at all, and bounded down the tree once again. He even did another flip, landing safely, placing Gummy on the ground.
"Thank you kindly,"
exclaimed Applebloom.
"Ha! A simple feat for the legendary Tanuki. And now I take my leave. Good day."
He raced away purposefully, and Applebloom watched him go. The Tanuki was a bit weird, but overall he was pretty cool.
There must be tons of amazing creatures just like that in this here forest, she thought. Here I am, stuck with this guy.
She looked down at where Gummy was placed and saw nothing.
Not again!
She exclaimed. Her eyes darted around until they found what the gator was attached to. Of all things, the Tanuki.
Gummy!
She yelled more out of frustration than actually calling out to the pet. She took off as fast as her little legs would carry her, barely keeping up with the athletic Tanuki. With all of her energy spent on sprinting to keep up with the creature, she could only spare one thought. Gummy really was the worst pet ever. The brown thing had the worst taste ever. Gummy had to spit out his egg to take a break before trying to open it again. But before he could get another shot, the brown thing grabbed him and took him away from the eggs. When he was put down, there was no food in sight. Just the yellow one, and Gummy had bitten the pink one enough times to know that their kind wasn't a good lunch, and the brown thing. So Gummy took a chance on the brown thing. It was a mistake. Gummy was about to let go when he spied something that the brown thing was holding. White, round. An egg! Gummy's eyes widened. There was still hope for a good lunch after all. Applebloom's lungs felt like they were on fire when the Tanuki finally slowed down. She kept running, trying her best to breathe. The trees thinned out until they gave way to a river, making it easier for the exhausted filly to keep her target in sight. Luckily, and before she collapsed, the Tanuki stopped at the river and hunched over. This gave her time to catch her breath and approach the Tanuki at an even pace.
Pardon me, Mr. Tanuki,
she said as she came up beside him. She could see that he was dipping the egg in the river. Gummy had detached himself and was now heading towards the water as well.
"Oh, young one, what brings you here?"
he asked.
My gator hitched a ride with you. I ran after so I could get him back,
she explained as she put a hoof to stop Gummy from going in the river. She learned her lesson about leaving the little rascal unattended.
"Is that so? Have we become friends?"
the Tanuki said with a laugh. Gummy replied by staring blankly at the egg in the river.
If you don't mind me asking, what are you doing?
Asked Applebloom, eyeing the egg as well.
"Ah, this? I'm washing my food. The legendary Tanuki cannot dine on something dirty found in the wild."
He lifted the egg and inspected it.
"See? Shiny, spotless. A meal worthy of one such as I."
Applebloom looked at the egg uneasily. She didn't like the idea that it would be food.
Mr. Tanuki, sir? Why do you eat eggs? Can't you find something else?
She asked.
"Of course I could, but this is my favorite meal, and the legendary Tanuki not entitled to his favorite thing?"
He was on his hind legs, again towering over the filly.
"But raccoons steal and eat eggs."
"Tanuki did it first. We deserve it,"
he growled.
"Do you question the ways of the Tanuki?"
He loomed over the girl, showing his teeth. She backed away.
No, sir. Go ahead and have the egg."
The Tanuki's expression went back to friendly in an instant.
"I'm glad you see it my way."
Applebloom hung her head. She didn't see it his way, but she wasn't going to be the egg's replacement. Maybe it was like Applejack said, that nature just works like it's supposed to. Some animals hunt other animals, and no pony could stop that.